Did you know that kinky wellness is integral to your self-development? Hi, welcome to the Partition, home of kinky wellness, the ultimate destination to explore the integral connection between kinky wellness and your personal development. I'm your host and kinky wellness coach, Dana Shergill, and each Monday I bring on a special guest to dive into specific aspects of kinky wellness. From unconventional practices to thought-provoking conversations, I'm here to break down barriers and redefine the boundaries of wellness and pleasure. Don't forget to join me for my solo shows on Wednesdays, where I explore even further into the multifaceted layers of kinky wellness. So let's strip away the shame and taboo together and have an open conversation about it. Hey, and welcome back. In this episode, we are welcoming back Reiki healer and intimacy and relationship coach, Shelby Avann. You should remember Shelby because she was previously on the podcast in episode 147, Attachment Styles, and again in episode 163, Intro to Reiki. But today we are getting a lot more personable and comfy with Shelby, as today we're going to be discussing our previous relationship lessons, where we fall on the spectrum of relationships, how Tinder actually works, qualities all relationship styles should have, and how our viewpoints of polyamory and monogamy have changed over the years. So let's not wait any longer and welcome Shelby back to the show. Welcome, Shelby. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited about the topic we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, I think actually it's a pretty hot topic, which is polyamory and monogamy. And we both had kind of our fair shares in it. And so today we're having a candid conversation about just our thoughts about it and our experiences with it. So do you want to start a little bit about your history within both of them and we can go from there?
Sure. So, I mean, I can work backwards, I guess, because more recently I was trying to work with, no, I never intentionally went into trying to go into like poly type of relationships or open relationships, but I kind of kept falling into something where that was the interest. It was something that I was semi interested in based off of like what I had been learning about as I've been going through like just learning about kink and different relationship styles and LGBTQ and just like all the different things that kind of revolve in the realm of sexuality and the world of kink. So I wasn't necessarily against it, but I was finding that it wasn't really working for me. And then before that, I was relatively monogamous, but kind of thinking back, also had some relationships where I was kind of like, maybe monogamy isn't quite the right thing for me. So I'm kind of like at this stage of, I think I still mostly want monogamy, but I just don't really know. I haven't been getting what it is that I actually need in any of the relationships I've had, to be honest.
Yeah.
As of yet. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm floundering a little bit, but I don't know. That's kind of the short version of what I've been experiencing.
Yeah, I think with me, I never considered myself polyamory. I think it just stumbled into it, quite honestly. I had a very, very close relationship with one of my best friends. And then when I started dating someone else, I kind of feel like we just brought him in
Mhm.
to our relationship. And then the three of us would always do everything together. We lived together. We'd be invited to weddings together. We went to
Mhm.
family functions together. We divided our time between the three of us together. And at the time, it felt like we were ahead of something.
Mhm.
And the friend group that I was in, it was very, very LGBTQ plus, and they were so excited, like, oh, you guys are polyamory. And we would get hyped up, and it was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. And then throughout the years, we kind of just all like, if people called us polyamory, like we just never corrected people, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
But that's the thing about it. Like, on a sexual level, like we weren't doing anything with anybody. Like that relationship opened up to being an open relationship as well for me. And I think the more that I kind of got into it and the more freedom that I got, I actually kind of came to my own conclusion that this wasn't the type of relationship that I wanted to really go into. And
Mhm.
that's what kind of flew me from one end of the pendulum back to the other of being like, no, I think I'm more monogamy. And I feel like, I've even seen certain circles when you talk about monogamy, there's like, oh, fuck monogamy. Like, screw
Yeah.
this, screw that, like all this talk. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, like I tried the other side and I wasn't like a big fan. So before you guys come down my throat, but I don't know if it's you to experience that, maybe because we're in the sexual health world. And I
Mhm.
understand that it's becoming more popular and people are being more open about it with the education that's coming out. But I do and I have seen that a lot of people rush into it. Now, I want to say that I'm not sure if I rushed into it or didn't really know what I was doing.
Mhm.
But yeah, like from my experience, it's like now where it's like, oh, don't do the default. And it's like, chill, I didn't do the default. But my opinion is I just prefer monogamy.
Yeah. It's interesting thinking about the journey that I had with it because I think the way that I kind of started opening up to the idea of potentially having multiple partners, it actually came more from a fantasy of something that I wanted to experience, but I don't think it was necessarily a relationship. And I say that and I'm like, no, I can think of exactly where it came from. It was from a book, and I was like, ooh, this is a really cool book. I'd love to have this relationship, which is like three people in a relationship. But at the same time, as I've kind of gone through it, it just doesn't seem to be the thing that's working. What I really think is required for me, at least in these types of like, if there's going to be any openness or extra people coming in, is there needs to be like that really secure base first. And that's just not something that I've been getting. Right. Because I feel like my experience has been that people have moved too fast, or I've kind of jumped into a situation where they already had other partners. And then I was kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't really know. Like, I really like this person. I don't know if I want to be with them, but they're already with someone. But do we share? Like, how do I actually want to go about this? Or like, and then later I was like, no, I want to be the primary. And that's not fair. They already have a primary. And I can't ask them to switch that because it like they've got a family and that's really like not something that I could ask them to do. So I was just like unhappy with that decision. And then other people just moved too fast, or it was just flat out cheating. There was no conversation. It's like, this is poly. It's like, no, we didn't discuss this. We did not agree to this. This is officially cheating now. Thank you very much. Um,
Honestly, to your point before we move on, like I also feel like that there's like unless you're an educator giving that information out, I do see a lot of, oh, like I am open or this is polyamory, but like don't say XYZ or let's not mention one, two, three. And it's like, okay, this is
mhm,
not transparent. But even to your point about the primary, like I would say that it was me and then my male partner, we were like the top here. And then we had a third female. And then I would say that she was like, not the primary. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, I would never want to be in a situation where I'm not the primary person.
mhm,
And because through this journey, I've kind of realized that I really do think that relationships are a push of reflection, a push for growth. This is where you see your wounds. And instead of, being like, oh, this person triggers this type of reaction out of me, I don't want to deal with this. I'll just kind of go to another
mhm,
person and,
mhm.
have a different type of relationship there. And I'm not saying everyone does this, but I have seen people do this in real time. So it's like, okay, well, you're not able to learn from your triggers. You're not able to heal from them in the way that if you're constantly with the one person to reinforce that growth.
Yeah, yeah, I really agree to that because I've seen quite a bit of that too. I don't think they're necessarily doing it on purpose. Like, I don't think they even realize that that's what's happening. But
Mhm.
yeah, they just start feeling a certain way. They're like, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to go deep with anyone. How about I just have a whole bunch of more like a shallower type of not and like not in a negative way, but just it just doesn't have that amount of depth where if you had one person that you were specifically focusing on all the time, where you'd be able to potentially get, right? So it's like, yeah, I think that there's some things there where it can be used in a way of like, escapism, and it's really frustrating too, because then you can kind of see it. And especially if you're someone that does want that depth again, and then you're kind of like, hey, I want to spend more time with you. Like, no,
Well, that's
I
the
can't
thing
do that.
too. Like when people are like, "Oh, you can have deep relationships with both people," and sure, but the fact of the matter is, you are splitting your time. So
Hmm.
how could you get like? Could you imagine if you put all that time into one person, the depth that you would be able to achieve in one area? So I think it just comes down to timing as well, and like stretching yourself to like where you want to go. I also find that polyamory relationships they I might get hate for this, but they don't have the vision that I find that monogamous relationships have, like the long-term 20, 30, 40,
Hmm.
50 years down the road. They don't have
Hmm.
that goal. And I'm not saying that you can plan 50 years of your life. Life loves to throw you curveballs, but I do feel a sense of security in building that actually really long term. Where are we going to retire together? Where are we going to do this? Like,
Hmm.
do you want kids? Do you want not kids? All of these things. But when you
Hmm.
have multiple people, I feel like it's a little bit, it's harder to plan out that far or see where you're headed, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it can be hard enough just between two people to figure out, like, to match up your goals and align yourselves, right? Because people are still sacrificing or, trying to talk and figure things out, but they may not want exactly the same things. And so they're, compromising is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, either sacrificing or compromising. And so you add more people, and then it's kind of like, oh, I'm like, oh, okay. So now we have to do this again and see if we can find something else. And it's like, it feels like a big game of, I don't know, trying to play rock, paper, scissors with a whole bunch of people. And it's like, who, a couple people are winning. And I don't know about the rest of you.
That's what I mean. Like, if you're not the primary, like, are you winning? Like, what happens here? Because, like, I do feel that we should be. I guess this is my personal opinion, but when you're with somebody, like, you should be like that person's top person. Like, you want to feel that top
Mm,
validation, that top, like, I'm important. You're important to me. We are connected on this higher level, I guess you could say,
mm,
and like don't settle to be second. I would never tell somebody, hey, like just settle, like
yeah.
even monogamous relationships, like don't settle for second best. So, like, even in this theory, like you can't give the same amount of attention all the time, every day. Like that's maybe on paper that seems like you can, but in real life, it doesn't work like that. When you
Mm,
add work and friendships and families and just day-to-day things, I just think it becomes a lot.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think, like, I was thinking too, though, because I was talking to one of my friends who he is poly, and he was telling me about why he really likes, like, the poly lifestyle and why it works for him. But his vision for what the future is completely different. And he comes at it from a really like aware way too. So he knows, like, to me, he doesn't necessarily want a family at this point, and like he likes his time alone. I don't know. I think, like, timing wise, he only has so much, like, time to give, and I don't know, he just seems to like a certain amount of time to give to a relationship. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's something that he wants to do full on. Like, he did say he did want a primary, but, like, yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting listening to him because he was talking about this, Polly, in a very self-aware way, and knowing, like, how, I guess, like, how much he can give and what he'd be willing to look at and stuff. I was like, see, I feel like this is really good because, like, what works for you, what doesn't. He said, actually, one of the things that he said that I thought was really cool was, in Polly, he feels like he can just be really open about whatever, like conflict, anything that might be bothering him. But when he was in more monogamous relationships, the conversations, he would have a harder time bringing up conflict because I don't know, there's like more pressure in the monogamous relationship. And I kind of felt that. I was like, I feel like, I understand the idea of that, because at least if you have multiple people going, like, if someone goes away, you might still have someone. But it's almost, but, like, even as I say that, I'm kind of like, it's like having backups.
That's what I kind of was thinking. Like, I agree with the statement that it feels kind of a little bit like backups. Like, again,
Hmm.
kind of to our previous point, like, oh, I don't want to go through this type of discomfort. So I'm going to turn to the other people and use them as a buffer to almost like charge myself up to have that conversation or to do the
Hmm.
thing you want to do. But like to say that there's, the same problems show up in both sides. Like, I don't believe that one is more stable than the other for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I feel like there's also, like, this is, again, one of the things that I also really liked about the idea of poly is, like, the communication and the self-awareness that I really did think, like, do feel can come through when people start to learn more about those different types of relationship constructs and whatnot. And then you can start to implement them. But it's like, it's so good for monogamy too. It's not just a poly, a trait or skill. It's something that should be used.
Yeah, like that's something I feel like I hear or see a lot on social media here. And I don't know if it's my
Hmm.
bubble, but like, oh, polyamory, there's so much communication, we're so open. It's like, is there like an idea going on that monogamous people aren't
Doing that.
communicating and doing this too? Like,
Hmm.
I would rather tell one person than multiple people, I guess at the end of the day. To me, that
Hmm.
just seems easier. And again, it's that depth that I guess I'm looking for in relationships. So,
Hmm.
and I guess that turns around like, what type of relationship are you looking for? If you're not really looking for that nuclear unit and you're okay to spread your time, then that works for you. But I do
Hmm.
think that relationships have potential to really come together as like a healing component to it
Yeah.
that you can only reach when you get to those deep levels as well, like as the healing journey goes on.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree to that. And I also like I also do feel like having that or going from a place where you're also like can be monogamous first, wanting that depth, and then being able to say, hey, I want to bring more like excitement and creativity or like fantasies into our lives. And then that could be including like other people into the relationship or into the sex lives. And then like that's a different type of thing that you could
That sounds
potentially bring
like,
in, right?
yeah, that kind of sounds like swinger culture, right? So like the a little bit more like you go out to a party, you might like fulfill your fantasies, you arrive
Hmm.
together, you leave together, but that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean obviously there's a relationship there and meeting the person and talking, but it doesn't mean that it's now all of a sudden it's another boyfriend girlfriend just because you're adding them in for that spice.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, true.
I think when it came to like polyamorous for me though, like there was a lot of social influences. Like I do feel like there's a lot more social influences on it and it is exciting to try it, but I do feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people are going out there trying it without really sitting down and like you know, learning more about what's actually there. Like there is going to be a lot more communication and learning to talk to like multiple people and filling them in because sometimes even like conflict happens if there's conflict between two people, at least it's two people, but if there's conflict between three people or four people, just get ready to be able to handle that still as well.
Yeah. Well, it can feel very like, stilting to the relationship when that happens, because then it's almost like everything does have to pause while this gets fixed.
Yeah, like I don't think that polyamorous are like better at resolving conflict because
Hmm.
they claim communication, communication, communication. But there's like
Hmm.
but I do think that it's good in the sense that like we teach awareness on jealousy, feelings like that. But again, they come up in both situations. It really doesn't matter.
Hmm. Well, I think with that too, there's a lot to actually look at when things pop up. So if like you do try a poly or some sort of open relationship. Like I found when I was dealing with those, the things that bothered me the most were the emotional connection that my partner was having with the other person, and me not feeling like I had enough of that because the first time that happened, I was with a partner who was bi, and then he was seeing me, and then he was seeing me like more casually, and then he was seeing a guy that was closer to where he was living more consistently, and then he'd tell me about them and stuff like that, and I enjoyed that for a time, and then one point in time I was like, I want more from you, and I'm not getting it, and then
Mhm.
I was this was at the very beginning, so I'm like, I can't give you what a guy can, so I'm not going to be jealous of this person, naively thinking this, and I was really jealous of the time that he was spending with his male partner in comparison to me. And I thought that was pretty like something really interesting to witness, but also showed me like what's really important in my relationships.
Yeah, I think that's what the best thing that happened to me is like what I valued in my relationship or like what I wanted, I guess, my relationship to be. And I am somebody who does want to plan long term, like
Hmm.
not saying that everything always works out, but just that like security of like, we're in this together. Like me and you are a unit. Like we come together, like you have my back, I have yours. And I felt like at least in that relationship, when we decided to kind of split, it was very much like, oh no, like you guys have to stay together. Like we all have to stay together because, I had also planned this, but then I saw right there that we all didn't have the same future. Like we all weren't even
Hmm.
going towards that direction and a lot of people got hurt and I'm not saying that you don't get hurt in monogamous relationships but like I feel like in polyamorous relationships there's a lot more, especially if you're not the primary, like there's a lot of things that you're not in
Yeah.
control of as much as I am when I'm in my monogamous relationship. It's more of
Hmm.
like an equal partnership. And I felt like that would be hard if you're like that was especially she took it very hard. So it's like I felt bad, but it's like this is still my life. Like
Yeah.
so it was complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. My last experience was something like that. I was not the primary. And I found that very, very hard because he was kind of moving too fast for the relationship, for both of us, to be honest. And I was really concerned about her, like his wife, because it didn't sound like she was really on board.
Mm.
And I was like, I need her to be on board because this doesn't feel okay if this isn't something that she wants. Like, I don't want Like I'm kind of feeling like a homewrecker over here. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And yeah, it just moved too fast. And it was really hard to have to deal with that because he'd be getting frustrated with her. And then he'd kind of share some stuff about like what she was complaining or like upset about. And I'm like, honestly, that's like, I'd be upset about it too. Like if we switched, her and I switched spots, like I'd be upset about that too. Like it makes sense.
So did you have did you and her talk then about this, or was it kind of like you went through him?
So we tried a little bit to connect, but that didn't work. It just, again, everything was moving too fast. We were trying to kind of be friends and talk, but it just wasn't working. Because she really wasn't ready for it, she kind of got to a point where she's like, just don't tell me anything. And then that's not something that I was okay with. So like, no, I need transparency. I don't want things being hidden here. I need to know what's okay, what's not. And I need her to know, like whatever level it is that we're going to, that that's okay with her. Like I don't want this to be unclear.
Hmm. And I have seen that too. Like you know what, you go out and do it if it makes you happy.
Hmm.
And then as you're in it, it's like, oh, actually, this is a lot for me. And something that I feel like that's valid. Like we're all like, oh, they need to like work through whatever, feelings that are coming up. But I kind
Hmm.
of am like, you're allowed to like be in it and then be like, you know what, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And there's no fault at that at all.
Yeah. But then it's hard. But then it's like very hard because it's kind of like you're definitely allowed to do it, and it kind of feels like whiplash. So because that's how I felt with it, because she would kind of be like, "You stop." I'm like, "Ah,
Well,
okay, okay." We're like, huh. All right.
that kind of goes back to my point of like the feeling of like loss of control a little bit because it seems like it's like there's a hierarchy system and there's a lot of trust and a lot of give and take here, but there does seem to be a hierarchy system
Hmm.
and like we can call it different ways if we want, but at the end of the day, like even the terminology, like we've got primary as the top word.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's weird. Like in the West, I've seen polyamory, but I've seen also instances in like other villages on my travels, and
Hmm.
on those, it's a lot more community based like
Hmm.
feeling. Here it's like I don't feel like we have the same appreciation of it like in the society level. So in the
Yeah.
places that I have seen it, like it's beautiful, it's flourishing, like all the children are raised by like everybody, it seems there's not
Hmm.
really a care, and it's a lot more community based. But
Hmm.
here I don't necessarily see that. I see a lot of people like trying because it's fun or it's going to like spice up their relationship or they're trying something new, but they don't come at it with the same lens because it's fairly new over here in comparison, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple of things just thought of as you were talking about that. One I was thinking of, like one of the things that I feel like poly sometimes people will move towards it, which is not the good reason. It's just like, oh, this is going to fix the relationship. And it's like, no, it won't. But then the other thing I was thinking was I have had another experience where I did like it technically wasn't a poly relationship, but he had been poly before. And he came to the conclusion that, like, honestly, over time, you just start to realize that you do end up focusing mainly on one to two people. And he was like, I want to focus on one person. I'm like, great, that's what I want. But then he had this really vast community of friends that he would hang out with. And I was like, I feel like this is what poly kind of means to you. It's like all these people that you really like, he clearly loves and cares about and wants to spend his time with like all the time. And I feel like that's a little bit more like that tribal community that you're kind of
You know
talking
what?
about. That feels similar.
As you're saying it, that's kind of what happened to me. Like, I feel like it was that group that we all wanted to be together, but the validation through it and looking back at it, I see that I did have like a wound there that also liked that attention as well. That also
Hmm.
like, oh, we're like, are we starting? Like, are we part of something new? Like, what's going on here? And
Hmm.
before we knew it, it just kind of became a thing. And looking back at it, like I wouldn't change it for the world because I wouldn't have the relationship that I have now. But I don't think I ever really fully understood the term. And I don't think I'm the only one. So I know that there's more
Hmm.
education going out there. But again, there's a lot of it, it's impressionable. And
Hmm.
I think that people do, and let's face it, like we kind of come from the generation where like 90% of people are like coming from divorced families and like
Hmm.
don't have these great examples of what monogamous could be. So it's like, oh, if that didn't work, let's try something else. But
Hmm.
it's like sometimes I don't think it's all the hype that people make it seem to be. A
Yeah.
little bit. Like I think that at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not as exciting as everyone keeps making it seem. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the energy that I think people go into it is like, oh,
Hmm.
this so excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, really excited about it. And it seems almost like there's like the stereotype that if you are in the LGBTQ community, if you're into kink or BDSM, then you're probably like should be poly as well.
Yeah. Oh my
And I'm like,
God.
I don't want to.
Well, I get that a lot, honestly. Like even especially with the partition, like no, at this point, no, no, we're
No.
like 100% just like the two of us, and that's where I feel like I hear the hate from it, and it's like I don't really hear a lot of people being like, "Fuck polyamory relationships," but I hear a lot of like. Fuck monogamy. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay. And I get that that's the default, and we should expand on what different types of relationships can be. But again, it's like that whole like us versus them that we've built even within the sexual wellness sector, especially like on the
Hmm.
same level of like, oh, they're only like vanilla stuff, like fuck them. Like, no, 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 that's also BDSM and kink. Let's bring it back. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I feel too. There's a spectrum to this.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing I was going to go down a rabbit hole on was the like divorced parent situation. So I feel like that I started leaning more towards like these alternative types of relationships when I saw problems with my family. And I was like, they're clearly doing it wrong. So something needs to change. And then I think that's why I leaned into it a little bit more. I want to learn how to do something better. But yeah, I think the divorce thing or the like witnessing a relationship that doesn't work, that's a monogamous relationship will definitely push you over that way. Cause it's like, fuck monogamy. I'm hurt from this and I'm going to try something else. And if like there should be a realization that, that might just come from a wounding thing. And maybe, a different type of relationship structure does work for you, or maybe you're just really scared of a monogamous relationship because of something that's happened.
I agree with that. Like there should be some self-reflection before we really, well, there should be self-reflection before we do anything, but I guess at the end of the day,
Yeah. And I think the like wanting to find different people to meet the different needs, I also think can be an avoidant tactic for asking for what it is that you need
mm,
in general. So if and that can be really like not great at all too, because depending on what that thing is, it's like I want emotional connection. That should be something that everyone gives you. That shouldn't be something that you like need to find from someone else. And if you're in a relationship, some sort of relationship with them, like no, that's like a baseline thing that should be given here. The other things that could like you could be looking for, like, hey, I really like to dance. I'd love to have other people that will dance with me. My partner doesn't love to do that. So like maybe I'll go find some friends that like to do that. That's a little more reasonable. But like if it's your core needs, the people that are in your life should be consistently being able to meet those. That's not something that you should, source out otherwise.
yeah, and from your perspective for avoidances, have you seen in your practice like people with avoidant tendencies tend to go into kind of more polyamory?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
don't think they recognize it right away, but yeah, I've seen it a couple times like, yes, you.
Well, I think because when you pair that with like we don't talk about attachment styles and we don't talk about wounds and how like it affects our certain decisions, but then when you have the popularity, again, I kind of feel like polyamory came in as a bit of a fad. Like I know that might hurt people's feelings, but it came very quickly and a lot of people jumped on board without actually kind of acknowledging what it is. And I would say that I'm part of that boat at the beginning. And again, I'm not saying everybody's like this, but I certainly see a lot of people where I'm like, you remind me of myself a few years ago. Like you
Hmm.
remind me of me.
Hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Like it's the cool thing to do. It's the more progressive thing to do. But something else I was thinking of was the time scheduling.
Mm.
I was talking about this with one of my girlfriends the other day. We were discussing how like one of the nice things with poly is that you like people do recognize that time is really important and needing to be able to actually like time block and schedule and like know when you're going to be seeing people and like prioritizing people. if it's an unhealthy type of dynamic in monogamy, that people forget that that's a thing that you really should do, is like prioritize your partner. Like just because they're there all the time, it doesn't mean that like the time that you're spending with them is making them feel prioritized or wanted or loved. And so making sure that that's intentional time. Like I feel like what I've seen in the poly world is that when people do choose to hang out with certain people, it's very intentional of what they're doing. And it can be taken advantage of in the monogamy realm of being like, they're just going to be there all the time. So like, whatever. You don't have to necessarily plan anything super exciting. Like they're going to be there. And I'm like, huh, not for long if you keep doing that.
Yeah, you know what? And that's a valid point about like the quality time too. Like the intention, it's the purpose, like the intention of
Mhm.
like, I really thought about you. I'm present here. I'm gonna like put my phone down. I'm just gonna like give you my
Mhm.
dedicated time for it. So I think that's actually a very valid point to like share. Like, yes, make sure that you remember that because I think it slips. It's like even with
Mhm.
long-term relationships, people just fall into that comfortability.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, like I started having to do this, and this isn't even with like anyone romantic. This is just with my family. So when I was living, so I'm not in Toronto right now, but when I was living in Toronto, I wasn't seeing my family because they're not in the city. I ended up putting a like recurring notification to myself every like week or 2 weeks and be like, text mom and dad, text Nana, and make sure like, connect with them because I wasn't. And so it's just kind of like, sometimes you could just put a reminder in your phone, be like, hey, we need to, text the people that you love and check in on them, make sure they're doing okay, and set up a cute date because you want something intentional and beautiful to continue to happen in your life, right? It's like a choice to continue that type of beautiful connected relationships by setting something up like that or remembering to do that.
That's actually so cute. I think more people need to do that. Like honestly, like it's fast. Life is fast. Life moves so fast that before you know it, it's like weeks had gone by before like, oh shit, that's right. Like I should message this person.
Yeah. Well, I kind of kept getting some messages from like when I would message, like talk to them on the phone or whatever. It's like, oh, we just don't hear from you very often. I was like, hmm, maybe I should do something about that. So
Well, what else? So what else did you learn from your previous poly relationship?
I learned that I wanted to be prioritized, which was like something that kind of followed through with monogamous relationships anyway. And I just felt that, but wasn't able to pinpoint it and probably really significantly until it came up in the one relationship. I knew I really needed that trust and transparency, like the really honest communication happening, no secrets, and the time intentionality. These are like from three different relationships I can think of, and that's kind of like those are probably the main things that I really took out of it. Because the other one I didn't talk about as much. I thought we were a monogamous relationship, but it turned out we were not. That I found out after like a year and a half. He told me he had been cheating on me. I was like, okay, awesome. So good. Love this for me. But we had consistently been talking about potentially opening it up. But I'm like, this is what I want before we do that. And then we just kind of like broke up, got back together. It was not a good relationship anyway. But I think he just kind of like started seeing people in between or while we were together. I don't really know. And then it just, he just kept, he just kept everyone instead of breaking up with all of whatever his harem was. And so like that part of it, the cheating side of it is what was one of the biggest parts where I knew I was like, I can't actually do with secrets. I can't do like don't ask, don't tell situation. I need to know what's going on. I need to be really clear on what relationships are going on, like what's happening, I need this. I need it. Otherwise I'll go insane from it. I'll be way too anxious. It's not going to work.
Well, yeah, like I know one old friend there, and it was the same thing. Like they would say they're in an open relationship, and then the one guy was telling us about like how the night before he was out with someone else, and we were like, "Oh, this is great. They're in an open, polyamory type situation." Like he's going off and rekindling all these other types of relationships, and then at the very end of the conversation, he's like, "But don't tell her." And it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
here we go." And then we would ask, like, "Are you guys open? Like, are you guys?" looking out and talking to other people, and she'd be like, yeah, 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 but like we're supposed to tell each other everything like we do, blah blah. She was under that
Impression.
impression, yeah. But
Hmm.
clearly it wasn't. And so it's unfortunate that there's like these bad examples, but it's so difficult because I actually see more bad examples. Like I hate to
Mhm.
be a Debbie Downer on this topic, but it's like I do know examples that are great and they're flourishing and it's amazing, but it's not more. Like I know way more where there's a lot of gray area where I know feelings are going to
Mhm.
get hurt, trust is getting broken, and it's not necessarily physical, but it's that mental and emotional side of even conversations, what's being said, and it's
Mhm.
too much gray area that I'm like, Mm.
Mhm.
I am not seeing a very positive, and this is just my experience, but I'm not seeing like a really, really positive outlook on this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only one relationship that, and I don't know them. This is just a podcast that I've listened to. And the dynamic to me sounds interesting, and I feel like it's something that could work, but it's more of a play. I think it's more of a play situation versus, again, like an actual bringing other people into the relationship and being involved in the relationship. But it's, yeah, like male female couple, and then I think the guy goes and looks for thirds to come and play with them,
Mm.
and then he'll find them, and then he'll talk to her about it, and then they'll say like yes or no, or have that discussion, and then they'll choose to like play with that other partner, but they're ultimately always with each other and they do not play a part. And I'm kind of like, I feel like that's the type of situation that I would honestly probably like to end up getting to after that, like, time of stability and building that relationship and becoming really strong. But I don't know if I'd actually want to have another relationship and be like a throuple
No,
per
like
se.
I know for a fact that I could not do it again. Like even like I have my husband and then to think if I had like a boyfriend or a secondary person, I'm kind of thinking like why? Because
Hmm.
when I have spare time or if I had enough time, like I even before my friends, like I want my own time. Like I like
Yeah.
actually kind of hanging out by myself. I have a lot of extra things that I like to do. I like to
Mhm.
hang like I don't know. I genuinely like my own space and peace. Like I think it's
Mhm.
fine that I don't really want to fill my time in. And I do see a couple of relationships where it seems like the person is going out of their way to just fill all their
Mhm.
time and they don't have any time from themselves. And when I start asking questions like, oh, you have all these relationships, but where do you have time for yourself? And if you have no time for yourself, but you're in these relationships, I have to sit and wonder, like, do you have like do you struggle to sit with your thoughts? Like do you
Mhm.
struggle to just bring yourself to the moment? Do you like these are just questions that come up for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair because I've seen that. I have seen that too. And sometimes I kind of think it might be a little bit too like that, but I think there's other things like some sort of like neurodivergence can also kind of play into factors of that. So not that I know that much about that topic, so maybe I won't talk about that, but I've kind of seen some of that where it's like there's some people just have like so much energy and so much like so much to give that they don't mind like jumping around and being able to be at all the places all at once. But it did kind of seem a little bit like, yeah, I was starting to question it for what it was. I don't know. There's something here that I'm kind of like, I just wish you'd chill,
Yeah,
chill a
like
little bit.
you got to have the relationship with yourself first, like above
Yeah.
all. So it's one of those things like I do think that if you do have I do think that if you have a bunch of relationships with a bunch of people, but you're not sitting and having a relationship with yourself, like even I do think it's part of your mental health and your energetic
Mhm.
health and all sorts of health. And people would be like, no, I get, it all external. Maybe this is just me and how I view the world, but I really think that you can't do it all externally. Like you have to go inward at
Mhm.
some point. It doesn't have to be every day, but it's got to be multiple times a week just to maintain balance.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm kind of thinking, even if you didn't actually do anything other than hang out with people all the time, even what you bring forward to those relationships, like what are you going to talk about other than the other people that you're in relationships with? That doesn't sound very fun or okay, because then it's like, what if, if they don't know each other or they wanted to tell the other person in the relationship whatever you just told them? Like, that's not, you know, they just don't have anything else to talk about. Like, your class that you tried to do, or this new thing you learned, or this download that you just got because you did meditation and saw enlightenment or whatever it was, right? But um, yeah, I don't really know what you'd talk about.
Well, also, like, you got to watch, like, we're pretty impressionable as human beings in general. So, if you're getting everything from externally, like, there's a lot of like our thoughts and behaviors that come from something else somewhere else. So it's like you got to peel back those layers
Mhm.
to even get back to like your core self and soul. Maybe this is going too deep, but yeah, a little bit on that end. And then you can come to these relationships and be like, this is me. This is like my own individual thoughts, my own like that's kind of what I think.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And like, so in following up with this too, I've also seen, I've experienced, I feel like this is what I've experienced in one of the relationships where there was too much value on what other people thought about me in the relationship. So the
Mm.
people that were surrounding my partner at the time, what they thought of me and whether or not that we were actually a good match. And then he ended up listening to them versus himself more, my perspective on it. But that's, yeah, that was kind of how I ended up feeling at the end of our relationship because he kind of like started bringing that up, being like, yeah, I talked to blah, 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 and they said this. And I was like, oh, great. That sounds really positive for our relationship. Great. And like, so yeah, so that is quite frustrating to experience something like that. And if they're not able to sit with themselves and find like what's actually true for them and what they really want, then then they can be swayed and directed by the people that are in their friend group or in their poly group or in what their family, whatever it is. And then they're more in control of your life than anything else.
Yeah, like I do feel like I've never been in not like it was again, it was like me and him were kind of like at the top of that little pyramid here, but it didn't used to be like that. It used to be like me and her. I think
Mhm.
we called the shots and like kind of dictated where the relationship was going or what we would do or where we would move and like things we would do. And then somewhere it switched. And that too, I would hate to be on the other end of like I feel so bad because I just something doesn't about that sit right with me. Something like I don't even know how to really put it into words, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's fair.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the fairness thing rings pretty true. As you were saying that, I was like, that's something that's definitely come up for me too. I remember saying that in some of my relationships, being like, what you're offering, what you're putting on the table, or what you're asking me to do now or settle for now, it's not fair. And that's not really something that I feel like should be put on the table. Like both of us should be feeling bad if that's actually what you're gonna offer.
Do you find that like do you go into relationships being like I am open to polyamory like still or you kind of just like go with the flow?
No, I don't want poly. That's not like my main struggle is that I know that eventually I want to be able to have something that can include other people, but again, I think more on that like play fantasy level. But I also like being able to like be able to have conversations with my partners, be like, that person's hot, and then not get upset about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I just think that stuff like that's kind of fun. But I don't. I think if they said that poly was the only way that they could go, that's not what would work for me. I just want them to be open. I think that's what I ultimately want. I just want them to have an open mindset about being able to be creative within the realm of sexuality. So like within kink, within like gender fluidity, within like yeah, adding more people or not. But I don't necessarily want another relationship alongside per se.
Yeah.
At this point in time, like I don't know, obviously everything can change, but that's kind of like I just man, it's hard, it's really just hard enough finding one. I just want one to start.
Listen, dating is so much harder nowadays. I do feel that. Like it's I don't know technology is supposed to make everything easier, but it really doesn't. Like I did that. I did a little bit of a Tinder to figure out how it works.
Mhm.
And this might be off topic here, but basically, I'm not sure if you know this, but like Tinder works by like if a lot of people get a lot of swipes, then they're only paired up with another people that get a lot of swipes, and then people
Oh.
that don't get swipes are paired up with people who also don't get swipes. So it's like the hot people like that are even if they're like traditionally what society thinks is hot, if anybody's swiping on them, then they're only going to be matched with a bunch of people that are also swiped together. So it's like it's not an even playing field. So I do feel like people, I feel bad for people who don't do well on apps like that because this app is kind of structured against you. It's not going to give it fairly.
I did not know that, but that's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, so I that was just on Tinder, but honestly, I'm sure they're all kind of like that. Like if they're all basically the same software code basically. So, yeah, little
Yeah.
tidbit there.
Yeah. I found I didn't like Tinder. I wanted to give it a like I've tried it twice so far, and neither time I enjoyed it. I just find that people don't talk to you. Like there's
Mm,
no effort is involved at all into like I no, like I can't do this. You guys are no one's talking to anyone here, mm, which is kind of the point. So I don't know what we're doing here.
yeah. Well, my husband was like, I don't like, yeah, he doesn't come from a background where polyamory is kind of like this talked about. So,
Mhm.
but that's to tell you the truth, kind of the reason why I picked him. I was like, you know what? I like that you're kind of old school and you like those traditional values because that's kind of where I'm sitting at right now. And
Mhm.
I do believe a lot in like the masculine, feminine energy type stuff like
Mhm.
that. So as much as people want to give me grief about it, to me it works and it makes my life easier. And I feel like me personally, I have seen in my past, like during that relationship, I was so far in the masculine role, it wasn't even funny. Like it
Mhm.
was so heavy, that type of responsibility, like being kind of put in that spot. And then now I really do feel like this relationship has helped me become so much more feminine. And I
Mhm.
wouldn't have been able to achieve this type of like balance if I had stayed in that type of relationship style, at least for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. 'Cause as you say that too, I'm kind of like, you know what? There are certain things which I feel like this might be some of the like maybe the things that people rub up against, which is that there are certain things there that are more traditional and we've just grown up with. So it's kind of like comforting and feels better for us. But then all of a sudden we're having our like angsty moments where we're just like, no, again, like fuck X, Y, and Z. And I don't want that and blah, blah, blah. And like I really like when the guy pays for my dinner. I love it. I really feel taken care of when they do that. And when I was in one of the relationships where it was like, I don't know, last time like the girl didn't want to do that. So I like he didn't really offer as much. And I always ended up doing like we did a half split. And I was like, uh I feel not good. And I also feel ill prepared here. Like, just tell me if we're paying ahead of time. And if we like, I can only do, my budget only allows for so much. I kind of need to have like a whole other conversation. So I appreciate you guys for paying for the dinners and being able to put that in your budget because I don't do that very often for myself and I can only do so much.
Well, it's nice. Like I do think that again, like I felt like in that previous relationship, I was more of like the let's get stuff done, like we're gonna do these things, but
Mhm.
now it's like my husband's kind of got that taken care of. Like obviously I'll be like, we need a date night and we'll go out and do something, but he's very much like taking a leadership role. And I
Mhm.
found that in that other one, like I was taking that leadership role, but then I was thinking about it. It's like, well, what would have happened if I was in a relationship where that guy was actually in the leadership role and he just had me and the other girl? That's where I feel like I would be like, like, I have to be again at the top of the food pyramid, the food chain here.
Mhm.
And that's something that I don't think I could ever really get out of a polyamorous relationship as I do in a monogamous relationship.
Mhm.
And people can agree or disagree, but that's just how I view it. Like you're one and only type deal. Like that's your go-to person. Like it's easier. I don't know. The rock. Like why do I need two rocks? Like I have a bunch of friends, bunch of family members. Like these are my other people, my other little pebbles, my other rocks. But like my most important like BFF, like the one that I want to go to, yeah, it's gonna be like my main guy. So like, if you want to split that up, then go for it. But I do feel a lot of value coming from one person.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I don't know. I feel like people just need to really look at what it is that they want,
Mm,
right? And yeah, I think like I just want to go back for a second to the, the fuck you paradigm versus the traditional paradigm. Be like, you're allowed to say fuck you to certain things that really don't align with you, but if there are things that do make you happy, then come back to those and say, yeah, this, some of these things are okay. And I think I'm just going to live with the fact that I like having the doors open for me and I like my meals being paid for. But I don't like, like not being able to talk about how hot these other people are and them being jealous. I want to be able to have like open conversations that are playful and fun and can appreciate other people, but not necessarily like, being able to recognize that it's not necessarily that we're like leaning towards going after someone. It's just like a conversation that we can have that's fun. And that's
Totally.
something where I want to say like, fuck you to the paradigm. Don't look at anyone else. It's like, no, let's look at other people and appreciate them and make it fun. Like that sounds like a good time to me.
Well, I think I'm lucky that way because I've got that. But like, yeah. So, and then I feel like with polyamory, like there's so many different types. Like we've even got people that are like, no, don't like people's Instagram photos. And then it's like, oh yeah, we don't care if you like people's Instagram photos. Like, and
Yeah.
people could say that that is on a scale of polyamory as well.
Yeah. 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 That just makes my brain hurt. Where I'm like, mm. Primary only, like you're only allowed to like the primaries photos. That's it.
Well, like I've
Mm,
seen too much data out there that like especially because a lot of studies I look at is like men who like excessive amounts of like OnlyFan photos and the
mm,
quality of their relationships and whether people like yeah, it's not that good. Like if you're like maybe because I'm looking at from the man's data there, but like if somebody is like constantly liking, it's that sexual stimuli and that can
mm,
kind of interfere because when they turn back to their woman, they have all this like online mental stimuli that like that's edited and it's fake and it's not real, so it can skew things. So that I'm interested in. Obviously, I'm going to dig deeper into that, but that's kind of like the foundation or of kind of like just looking at a couple of things being like, oh, okay. So all of these things matter. And I think that people need to realize that all the little things that we do or do not do in relationships do add up, whether it's for good
mhm,
or for bad. So for people to be like, oh, it doesn't matter, I would argue it does. Like it actually really does. Like it might
mhm.
not matter right now in this moment, but come back to me in a year or two and let's open up the conversation and see if it added any stress or took away stress.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it is some of those little things that really do affect the relationships, right? So again, looking, pay if your partner feels like they're paying more attention to your phone
Mhm.
than to them when you're hanging out with them. And then if you have other partners too, and you're like, listen, you're paying, you know, pay attention to the other partners, you go and hang out with them. And then when you hang out with me, you're only paying attention to your phone. And yeah, either like potentially looking at their photos when you're hanging out with me or OnlyFans photos or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to go well over time at
Yeah.
all, at all. But it's a bigger, deeper thing than that too. It's like, again, not feeling prioritized or worthy, or like there's something deeper that's coming from that or what people will feel from that.
Well,
Yeah.
when it
Cause if
was there anything else that you wanted to say specifically about polyamory?
I really like Fern Michael's books. Thanks, Fern Michael, like Poly Secure and Polywise. I like her books a lot, but and like the first portions of one of the books, it's all like based on attachment style and stuff. But I like again the communication stuff that she discusses in there. And I think those are good, no matter what side of the relationship style you choose. It's a plug as a reference or a resource that if people want to go check something out.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I do see, like, on the educator side of polyamorous, I love it. But on the
Hmm.
general consumer side, that's where I see a lot of issues because they're not going to people that are teaching us. They don't really have that much education, but the idea of it is out there. And yeah, that's why it's such good resources to like, there are people that would teach you like how to deal with this and kind of like certain things, like certain problems that can come up. So that can be quite helpful. Like Ray, she's been on the show lots of times. Like
Hmm.
she's a great resource to reach out to for this type of stuff. That's kind of like her
Hmm.
main thing. But like
Hmm.
I meet a lot of people that say they're polyamorous and I just go, I really feel like you're trying to run away from something or you're trying to fill something up. And
Yeah.
I know I, that's just my experience.
Hmm. Yeah. I really feel like it's a process to be able to find like a really beautiful conscious partner that
Mm.
aligns with you really well. So I think most, some of the things I'm just like amazed that people have multiple partners and that they really all I'm like, I don't know how you found all these people that you don't have problems with them. I could just see like, I don't know. I think there's more to it. But nonetheless, I think the last thing I would say would be I still think it's probably if you're interested in it, try it because you're going to learn something from it. And
Hmm.
then you can just decide like whether or not, that's the lifestyle that actually is for you or not.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. And where can my listeners find you?
Okay, they can find me at shelbyavann .ca. I've got a couple of women's circles coming up this summer, but I think I'm going to do them in the 2024 fall as well. And they're going to be in the Kneeling Room, which is the dungeon of Lady Pim in Toronto. So my next one that's coming up is July 14th, and that's going to be intimacy with sensuality and sexuality. And then the one in August, I think it's August 4th, it's intimacy with power and control. Yeah.
Ooh, these
Yeah.
are
So
always
we're,
spicy. All your classes
I
are so spicy.
know, I know. Well, I wanted to do these women's circles that opened up like taboo topics or feelings. Because I really love going to women's circles, and I do some like tantra ones that like I attend some tantra ones, which are really nice, and they're very like emotional, and I'll cry, and they're very like heart opening and a lot more like kind of like spiritual-ish feeling. Not that mine aren't, but I just find that those ones are also a lot, they feel a lot lighter. Yeah, so I really wanted to focus on like the shadow. There it's my dark goddess like series. So it's all about shadows and shame and again like the taboo, and it's in the kneeling room. So it's all meant to be like kinky taboo stuff.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. And what about your social media?
Intimacy Mistress is my social media. I've kind of leaned into more of my own passion on that versus my coaching stuff, but that's mostly pole right now. But if you want to find any of my circles or any information about my coaching, it is on my Instagram too. So you can see that stuff there. So yeah, I do like one-to-one coaching, relationship and intimacy coaching too. So you guys
Wonderful.
can ask me about all the things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Shelby, for coming on the show. And for my listeners, you guys know what to do. As always, stay kinky.